There's a party in Quebec that may not win the election, but could decide whether anyone else wins it either. Bonjour Canada, welcome to Distinct Quebec Politics with an Accent, a podcast where we try to make sense of Quebec politics for a Canadian audience. This week, Quebec's National Assembly is back for its final session before this fall's election. Today, we are focusing on one political party that is not represented at the National Assembly, but still could play a decisive role in the next election. I'm talking about the Conservative Party of Quebec, PCQ. It's one of the least well-known parties in Quebec politics, a relatively young party that caught fire in the aftermath of the pandemic. Since then, it has consistently polled in the double digit across Quebec. And that number is important because even without winning many seats, it will have an effect in dozens of ridings across Quebec. So today, we'll get into what does the Conservative Party of Quebec stand for? Who is its leader? And what are their real chances in the upcoming election? Let's start with where this party comes from. The PCQ is not entirely new, but its modern political relevance is recent. In 2021, the party elected a new leader, transitioning from irrelevance to a period of growth and consolidation. In the 2022 general election, the PCQ achieved its strongest result to date. It finished in the low teens province-wide, but failing to elect a single member of the National Assembly. Since then, by-elections and local results have confirmed a clear pattern. No victories yet, but a clear, stable momentum and party building. That raises a bigger question. Why is it that the Conservative Party is emerging so late in Quebec politics? Well, historically, Quebec has had conservative government, just not the label. Think of Maurice Duplessis and the Union Nationale. That was a conservative government. After that, for decades, Quebec politics was structured around one dominant question: sovereignty. That produced a big tent, two-party system. On one hand, the sovereigntist Parti Québécois, and on the other hand, the federalist Quebec Liberal Party. Both parties had conservative elements within them, one more on the identity spectrum and the other one more on the economy spectrum. As the sovereignty question cooled down, it allowed a realignment of the political spectrum in Quebec, eventually leading to the creation of the current government, the CAQ, a center-right coalition that absorbed the conservative electorate in Quebec. Over time, cracks appeared. Pandemic restrictions, the rising of cost of living, deficit spending, record deficit spending that put into question the CAQ conservative credentials. That dissatisfaction did not create the PCQ, but it revived it. The revival of the PCQ is closely tied to one person, Éric Duhaime. Duhaime became leader in 2021. He's a seasoned political commentator with a long career in media, especially in the Quebec City region. Earlier in his career, he worked as a political staffer both for the Parti Québécois and the Bloc Québécois. He also ran for the Action démocratique du Québec, the ADQ, the party that preceded the CAQ. Also, Duhaime worked with Stockwell Day's Canadian Alliance back in the early 2000s. He understands Quebec's media ecosystem, and he's an agile, tactical political strategist. He is fluently bilingual and a federalist. Under his leadership, the PCQ became a clear political vehicle for voters who reject sovereignty, who are skeptical of our ever-growing state, and feel politically homeless in the current party system. So what does the PCQ stand for? The Conservative Party of Quebec is built around a set of clear values: individual freedom, lower taxes, personal responsibility, deregulation, and a smaller state. Its conservatism is primarily economic, a classic laissez-faire conservatism, not social conservatism and not identity-based conservatism. The party argues that Quebec has grown too big and too bureaucratic. It wants the state to focus on essential functions, not manage everyday lives or direct the economy. This includes a greater role for private services in healthcare and the full exploitation of the shale gas in Quebec. Social issues, religion, and culture war politics are not central to the platform. Identity and French language are acknowledged in the platform, but are secondary to the party's economic freedom agenda. On federalism, the PCQ is not a sovereignist party. It supports Quebec remaining in Canada and does not frame politics into a constitutional confrontation. As a result, it competes almost exclusively within the non-sovereignist voters. Voters who reject the independence of Quebec and want political change within the Canadian framework. And in case you were wondering, there is no formal links between the Conservative Party of Quebec and the Conservative Party of Canada. The PCQ is not the Quebec wing of the Conservative Party of Canada. The PCQ's main strength is its clarity. Its message is simple and coherent. Smaller government, lower taxes, and more freedom. That clarity helps to mobilize a loyal and a motivated base, especially needed in close races. Its main weakness is reach. The message resonates strongly within a core segment, but fails miserably to expand beyond that, especially in a Quebec that is still attached to its public services and a strong state. The party lacks institutional depth. With no caucus and the lack of governing track record, it is often seen more as a protest vote than as a governing alternative. Finally, the leader has a tendency towards grievance-driven and negative politics. In a global context marked with uncertainty and instability, voters tend to reward calm and reassuring leadership, not confrontation or permanent opposition. So, what are the chances of the PCQ in the next general election? As of early 2026, the PCQ is polling in the mid-teens. In the last year, the Conservative Party of Quebec has been polling in a range between 13 to 16%. According to projection models, if there was an election today, the PCQ would win between 6 to 10 seats. So that's not a big breakthrough, but also it's not nothing. It's a base to build on. Geographically, the PCQ is clearly the strongest in the Quebec City region. That is its core base. Its numbers are lower in Montreal and in the rest of Quebec. On language, the PCQ performs better among non-Francophone voters, but realistically, the gains will be made among ridings with Francophone voters. The number with non-Francophone voters, why is it so high? Well, basically, it's another federalist alternative. All of these numbers leads to an important clarification. This does not point to a PCQ government, but what it does point to is a higher risk of a minority government this fall. If the PCQ remains this strong, especially in the Quebec City region, it could successfully peel off enough votes to block a majority government. In that scenario, the PCQ acts like a spoiler rather than an alternative government. It doesn't need to win many seats to change the outcome. A handful of seats could make a huge difference. That said, there's about 8 months left before the next general election. And in politics, that's an eternity. Most importantly, campaigns matter. There's still a lot of hockey left in the game. The uncertainty is part of the dynamics we'll be watching closely week after week. This is Distinct, Quebec politics with an accent. I'm Farouk Karim. À la semaine prochaine.